Hey everyone, welcome to Heal Squad with Maria Menounos. And no, it's not Maria Menounos, it's Mr. Maria Menounos. Come to you today with a great interview with Zee Clarke, author of the book Black People Breathe. And I'll tell you, book for females, people of color, and I think just anyone who is struggling with anxiety, really looking to get into breath work and apply that toward healing. She sees breath work as medicine. I happen to agree, meditation as medicine. And she has different types of meditations that she prescribes for different kinds of ailments. So one for fatigue and one for anxiety. So many great things we went over here. Also, dealing with corporate structure and even for you people that are kind of stuck in a job that maybe isn't filling your cup, doesn't really speak to you, and maybe how to ascend past that, or maybe not. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed the interview I had with her. I certainly did. I learned a lot. Please let us know what you think in the comments. And furthermore, give us that 5-star rating over at Apple Podcasts and review. We certainly appreciate it. That being said, I give you our Heal Squad with Maria Menounos interview with author Zee Clarke, author of the book Black People Breathe. Hey Zee, so excited to talk to you about something that is so necessary. I can't understate it enough how necessary it is, the work that you're doing and what you can teach us. But as I was saying to you before we started the call, your journey, just your journey alone also fascinates me. And I think there's so many aspirational and educational elements to your journey. As someone who attended Harvard University, seems like you got into corporate America and then was like, wait, this isn't me. This isn't what I want to do. This isn't my dream. And you totally pivoted and where you are now. But I feel like a lot of us are feeling like that, especially now since COVID, where we all followed this one map for whatever reason, society, whatever. And we're all like at a point now where we're questioning that. And many of us want to make the change, but I think we don't think we can do it. We're lacking the courage, the resources, a lot of different things. But can we start? Will you tell me a little bit about your journey? And I want to add to what touched me as well is when I didn't somewhere in your past, you loved writing and you wanted to write, and weren't you told like, right, get a real job like that? That's because that spoke to me. That was my parents were like, you need a job with benefits. That was so. I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are gonna really appreciate your journey and learn from it. And the more you can, tips and tricks you can give us to help us there, before we get into the mindfulness, which I think is probably going to help. But this was your journey to mindfulness. So
yes,
I've already said too much. So Zee, take it from there. Tell me about your story.
Yeah. Well, I spent over 20 years in corporate America and Fortune 500 companies and startups in Silicon Valley. And you're right, I did go to Harvard University twice, actually. I went there for undergrad, studied economics.
Oh my goodness.
Started my career in financial services in New York, Citigroup, Amex. I went back to Harvard for business school. And then I moved to the Bay Area and did management consulting. And then I worked in tech companies. And during all of that time, I was often the only woman in the room, the only Black person, the only Black woman. And I experienced a number of microaggressions, everything from, "Are you the new diversity hire?"
Oh,
Yeah. Or comments.
Sorry to laugh. It's just like I can't
Yes.
believe
Yeah.
people.
Are you the new diversity hire? And
yes, I am. Hi.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not the job that I applied for. But it makes you question yourself. It makes you wonder, well, did they only hire me because I'm Black?
Oof.
Am I qualified to be here? Right? I even had a boss say to me, first week of work, he said, "Can I talk to you?" I was like, "Sure." And he closed the door, which is kind of a big deal. I closed the door and he said, "I just want you to know, I didn't hire you because you're Black." That at that point had never crossed my mind.
Wow. So is this a male, or can I ask, male or female who said that?
Male. Male.
And so he probably thought he was helping you and
Yes.
saying something nice.
He
What
really, really did.
his intention, right?
And
Wow.
that's if we talk about microaggressions, right? Microaggressions are often unintentional or
Yes.
unconscious, right?
Yeah.
But the impact of these statements or actions can actually be really, really big, right? They can cause
Yes.
low self-esteem. They can cause
Well,
people
they can't. Well, you see, here's the thing, and this is where Z, you can help us or help me. Is I am sure I've been guilty of that.
Hmm,
That close the door. I got your back. I know everyone out there is whatever they are, and I got your back. But not thinking I'm helping, but not realizing that in some way I'm pushing a button or triggering or
yes.
and I think what we need, our generation needs help with is, is how, like how to go about how to yeah, because I wouldn't know. I know now,
Mm,
but even like 10 years ago, I wouldn't have known that
yeah,
that was, but I know now. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's educate. It's so I know when you're in, you're helping all the people that are traumatized, but I'm going to ask for help that you can help the
yeah.
people on the outside who are well intended, but they don't know any
Mhm.
better. We don't know better. Um, yeah, and I shouldn't. I'm making it about me. What a surprise! All right, so Z, go back to you're going
Well,
through.
let me just react to what you just
Please,
said, though.
please,
So, first of all, I think the biggest thing that allies can do, or aspiring allies, is to educate yourselves,
right?
right? My book, Black People Breathe, actually every chapter is something that happens to Black people. And people that I worked with, people that I went to school with, might read about themselves in this book, and they might not have known that this was a microaggression, for example. And so I
Right.
think the biggest thing allies can do is be proactive about educating yourself on
Yes.
what are the things that could be seen
And
as
this book,
offensive.
and see what I thought loved about the book, and I only was able to go through it quickly because I'm in the role of backup quarterback. What I liked is it to me, it was relatable to anyone who has felt unseen or
Mm,
is feels like they're an outsider, So there was a lot, I think, for a lot of people,
mm.
even beyond Black people, to relate to. But you're right. There's stuff that the older generation can pick up on and say, "Oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it." So that is a great resource. But continue,
Yeah, but let me bring it back to my journey, because you originally asked
please.
about my journey. And what
Yeah.
happened is that I was in corporate America. I always felt like I needed to work twice as hard just to be treated like everyone else, because people were questioning my competence. I felt like I was banging my head against not the glass ceiling, but what is known as the concrete ceiling for women of color, because that ceiling often feels like it can't be broken. And when you're working twice as hard, when you're working nights, when you're working weekends, that's
Yes.
going to lead to burnout. And burnout is real. And at a certain point, it's
Right.
not just your mental health, right? Anxiety, chronic stress, but it
Oh,
starts
it's
to affect your
our
physical.
whole. That's right. Our whole show's based on that. So
Yes.
yes, it 100% takes the physical, the
Yes.
autoimmune diseases, the cancers, the all of
Yes.
it.
And so
Yes.
my doctors were like, something's got to change. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to take myself seriously. And so I quit. I quit corporate America. In fact, when I quit my last Silicon Valley job, a senior executive at the company, she came to me and she said, "Yeah, I just wanted to say goodbye and like let's have a walk." So we went for a walking meeting, and she said, "How does it feel to know that the only thing people are talking about is that a Black woman just quit?" And I was like,
That
this is
door
why
just
I quit.
opened.
But basically, what I did, I went to India. I joke that I did the Black girl version of eat, pray, love. I was
Yeah.
meditating.
Right.
I was doing yoga, and I learned these practices of mindfulness, of breath work, and I never felt better in my entire life. I feel like the chronic stress that I experienced, the constantly being triggered ever since I was 8 years old, the first day of school at a very fancy private school in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., where I got a scholarship. That's the first time I experienced imposter syndrome. That's the first time I felt like I was treated differently because of what I looked like.
Okay. Can we put a pin in imposter syndrome? Because I need
Yes,
you to really help me with that because I know but I want to back up now with the journey.
yes,
So I know a lot of my female friends
mm,
say the exact same thing. I have to work twice as hard
yes,
just to even hit the median level of respect. And I will say selfishly, I have enjoyed hiring women over men because they work harder and they care more. I'll just say that. No, I mean, I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah.
And there's, listen, we're all better together. And there's guys I know that have been great too. But for us guys, myself included, we definitely know we can just get by. We can cruise. We can, where you don't have that, you don't necessarily have that luxury, and you have that pressure, and it totally does hit your mental health, and that hits your physical health.
Yes.
What I want to explore more with you is, before we get to India, what fascinates me so much was that all of your education is based on economics and business.
Yeah.
And you're on that path.
Yes.
So was that something that you were doing because you just were like, hey, I'll make good money, I'll be successful? Or did you really love economics and business? I want to know that first. What was it for you?
Well, first, I want to share that I grew up in a very low income environment with my family, right? And so both of my parents are immigrants. And so survival is a real thing.
Yes.
My father, when I said I wanted to major in philosophy, he said to me, who's going to hire you? How are you going to get a job? And you mentioned the writer thing. I always wanted to be a writer. In fact, when I was like 10 or 11 years old, I tried to get a short story published, and I have a rejection letter. I still have it, a physical paper rejection letter from Random House. My Black People Breathe publisher is Penguin Random House. And this letter said that I was somebody to watch in the future. I always wanted to be a writer. And my parents said, you need a job. Your point about benefits, you need security, and not having parents that could be my financial cushion. I couldn't go explore my passion. I'm a violinist. I have played the violin since I was 5. I got into Juilliard for college. You want to know why I didn't go to Juilliard? Because I didn't want to be poor when I grew up. So did I love economics? Did I love business? I loved the ability to feed myself and to pay my rent, because my parents were not going to be able to do so for me if I were to fail. So this was completely about financial security.
Gotcha. And it's nice that you don't hold that against your parents. Like, you understand why, right? My parents were saying, I understand. My dad was a ditch digger. I understand. He was a laborer. So I understand. And I loved your take on it. So is it more, do you feel as though you're grateful? I know you must be grateful that you did that, because you ended up here, but at the same time, did it provide you the finances and the resources to kind of be able to breathe now, to take it next level? Or looking back at your younger self, would you have just said, hey, I'm going to write and play the violin, and I'll have nothing, and I'm going to go on the Eat, Pray, Love journey that way?
So I have no regrets. First of all, my financial situation was real. I did need to be able to support myself. I also feel like I learned a ton in corporate America. And in fact, the work that I do today, I teach mindfulness and breathwork to people of color in the workplace for the most part. Like, I teach companies' employees, but I'm leveraging a lot of the skills that I learned in the workplace, everything from who's my target marketing, right? What's my value proposition, right? Who am I serving? What problems am I solving? And how can I reach them? I worked at an innovation and design firm where I learned design thinking. Design thinking is all about understanding the needs of the people that you want to serve, and really getting to not just giving somebody a product, but understanding what problems do they have, and and how can I help them? So, for example, today, the problem that I'm solving is that Black people and all people of color in the workplace experience microaggressions and racism, which cause them to have chronic stress, high blood pressure, diabetes, weakened immune system, and I could go on, right? This is a problem that I personally experienced. And then I went to India and learned tools that helped me to deal with
To
this
deal
problem
with it, right?
that I had, and now I can help others. I learned so much in the workplace and in business and economics classes, but also mostly like on the ground in business, that have helped me to be a more effective person today. So no, I don't wish that I had gone to Juilliard. I don't. And you know what? It's funny, when I worked at Amex, there was a woman who was a receptionist at Amex who had a master's from Juilliard in opera singing, right? And I met her and I was like, wow. And she was like, I couldn't eat. I couldn't support myself. So she's like, that's why I'm a receptionist here at Amex now. And there's nothing wrong with being a receptionist.
Yeah, of course.
Like people, like I love, right? But
Yeah.
I will say that lessons, I learned a lot of lessons, and now the violin is pure love. It used to be stress, especially with classical music and violinists. It like I wish I had my breathing techniques in order to perform with less anxiety when I was younger. So no regrets whatsoever.
So this is what I love, and this is the important thing that I want people to hear in your story is that let's say phase one was the growing up the way you grew up, and then phase two was the career in economics of business, and phase three is this one. I think that what I struggle with as I coach younger people is they want to get rid of the second part of your journey. What I love about your story, and everyone has a different story and a different journey, and I respect that, but I do think that sometimes we throw the baby out with the bathwater, but we don't value the practicalities. Like, hey, there's just certain things. I call it eating frogs. There's certain times we have to eat frogs. But then what I think you get to a place where you go, enough. I've eaten enough frogs. I'm going to get really sick. And I think that's when people don't know how to get off. Unfortunately, they're, for a number of different reasons, they want to get off. And then also, what blows my mind about you and is all the stuff you just dropped so quickly. Human design and this and that. I mean, you understand, like, I'm really going off topic here, but like you have this mindful business that you can teach us as well.
Yeah.
Mixing the corporate, because listen, we still need corporate structure, and like for the world to go around, like we need to have those jobs. But there is a way to do it, which is, I know what you're doing right now is teach us how to do it. So but I guess what I'm trying to get at is like, what gave you the courage to quit a cool job and go, and then, by the way, just be, I'm going to quit, take some time off, maybe open a coffee shop. I've seen that before and I love that play, but I'm quitting and going to India. Was that hard for you to?
It was so hard. And, it was hard because I wondered, if I want to come back to corporate America, will I be able to? Will people look at my resume, see a gap, and judge me? And especially as a Black woman, it's already harder. It's already harder for us to get jobs. And so we have to be overqualified in order to get the jobs, right? And so if there's any doubt whatsoever, this was a huge risk. And I will tell you that it was seeing other people model it that gave me the courage to quit.
So who did you see? So did you, anyone we know, or just even without knowing who they really are, but friends? Okay. So tell me.
The idea of a sabbatical. I knew multiple people, not a lot, but a couple people that had taken sabbaticals, and then they figured it out and they went back. And I looked at, I was like, I must be able to get a job again. Like, I'm sure that they were able to, and granted, none of them were people of color. So that is another factor, but I saw them do that. A, B, I was miserable. Seriously, I wasn't sleeping. Like my doctors were like, something's got to change. My stomach always looked.
But Zee, how many of your friends do you know that just knuckle through it? Do you know what I mean? They just keep going until breast cancer and
and also, I go like Harvard Business School, right? It's like success and other people's definition of success is what drives us. What will people think? Am I good enough? I need to constantly prove that I'm good enough, successful. I make X amount of money. My title is this. And here's the thing. there is always going to be the next thing to strive for. So much so that sometimes I felt like I'm just sprinting on a treadmill and going nowhere. And so there's always the next thing, but then we don't take care of ourselves and we do things not because we really want to. If we closed our eyes and thought about it, like, is this what I love? No, we're doing it for other people. And then not to mention when you have a family and you have a mortgage and you have children and all these other factors, people depending on you, like, it is very natural. I think most people are working for practical reasons and not because of the love of it.
Yeah. So what do we, I mean, like, I guess you try to minimize like what some of these other excesses. I think you probably minimize or you change your view of success, because that's Harvard. I mean, that's the cream of the cream of the cream of the crop. And I know many of the people I know from Harvard, I know what they see success to be. And so you modeled, I like this idea. You modeled after other people that had gone on sabbatical. And then was the idea, I'm just going to quiet down the ride to figure out what my next thing is going to be?
I needed to heal. My whole purpose.
The first thing was heal. Okay, I like this.
Yes.
Go.
I was not okay. The chronic stress, especially from all the microaggressions, especially from banging my head on that ceiling, not going anywhere. My self-esteem was in the gutter. My sense of self-worth was in the gutter. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't eating. I needed to feel better. So I spent that time restoring myself. I spent that time learning tools to help myself feel better. And it was in this journey of me feeling better and finally feeling better that I felt this calling to share these tools with others.
So Zee, can I ask you, how long was that period of healing?
It was about almost 2 years that I took off.
2 years of healing. Okay. And was it 2 years, all of it in India?
No. I was in Peru with the shaman. I was traveling through the Southwest. I was in the Bay Area.
You invested your right. This wasn't free. Like, you had to have, right?
I planned for it, but yes, I did. I didn't plan for 2 years, by the way. I planned for 1 year. And then at the end of the year, I couldn't go back. I couldn't do it. And I needed to listen to my gut because I didn't want to experience burnout again. Like, the thing is, life is short. And I have, you said I look young. Yeah, it's true. I am, I'm in my 40s. I think 40s are young.
It is young. No, but I mean younger. And I guess I'm speaking to Gen Z millennials who want to cut out the phase 2.
Yeah.
Which hopefully your phase 2 maybe can be a year or 5 years, but it's tough to go from that, leave the nest, and then eat, pray, love. That's all I'm trying to say. Sometimes we have to have those. We have to do practical things to get the wisdom or the resources or the finance, whatever it is. That's all I was saying.
Yeah.
And you are super young, but I just was saying that for our 20-year-olds.
There's a balance though, right? Because what I was going to share with you is that life is short. And I know that you know that, but at age 33, I lost 6 friends in an 18-month period. Okay. Right. At age 33. And what I realized from that is that, wow, I'm not going to be here forever. So I hear you that you're advising younger people that you got to almost suffer a little bit and then do the fun thing. And I'll argue that there is a balance. And
there's definitely a balance. It's not it. It's just I'm talking to people who want to throw it all away.
Yeah. Well,
do you know what I mean? And that, I think, is going to lead to catastrophe when you're 50 or 60, because there are certain realities we can't get around.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to see anyone get sick, but if there's ever a time you can do it, it's when you're younger and you're stronger. It does catch you, and we're seeing it catch people in their late 20s now. Like, when we, so no, I'm really with you on this. And you probably, your journey, like, I love your journey. Maybe you could have ended, maybe you could have gotten out of there younger. I don't know. That would be for you to say.
Well, I want to use the word mindfulness. Right.
Yeah.
And share with you that mindfulness is paying attention in the present moment without judgment. And mindfulness,
I like that.
Can
you say that again?
Mindfulness is paying attention in the present moment without judgment.
That's incredible, without judgment. Because one of my questions for you, what is mindfulness? Now, I know we hear about it, we practice it without judgment. That's amazing. All right, Zee, please keep going.
So without judgment and mindfulness around lots of things, but I am always talking about mindfulness around how you're feeling. Pay attention to how you're feeling. You might be running around in your corporate job, and I'm definitely an overachiever, even in my world today. Like it's just in my blood to just try to be the best at all the things, right? And then you ignore yourself. You ignore how you're feeling. And it's so important to pay attention so that you can get on top of burnout before it happens, so that you can know that maybe this isn't the job for me. Maybe this isn't the team for me, or maybe today I'm tired. And so those things that are less urgent, I should do them tomorrow and not today. And this is where breath work actually comes in as well. Right. And so mindfulness, paying attention in the present moment without judgment. But I believe that breath work meaning breathing with intention, there are specific breathing practices that one can do. And I believe that breath work is like medicine, right? Just like you take Advil when you have a headache, just like you take antihistamines when you have allergies, you can ask yourself, how am I feeling? And if you're feeling tired, there's a breathing practice. If you're feeling anxious, there's a breathing practice. But you need to be mindful of how you're feeling first. And this is both in this moment today, but also zooming out in your career and life journey, right? It took me like almost getting hit by a truck, right? For doctors to be like, hey, I'll share a quick story. I was on a plane. I was on a plane from San Francisco to LA for a business trip. And I super swamped as usual. So I had my computer, I had my headphones on, the sign, don't talk to me, I'm working. I had this like crazy spreadsheet up and I'm like looking like a crazy person, right? And this guy, complete stranger, he nudged me. So I had to, and mind you, that's a short flight. So if you're trying to do work on a computer, LA to San Francisco, like not that much time, but you can.
Here's the thing, note to everyone, don't poke overachieving Harvard grads. I wouldn't like, no.
Yeah. So I take my headphones out.
Oh boy.
And I was like, yeah. And he goes, have you ever thought about slowing down? I think you need to slow down. And I was like, I was offended. I was like, oh, mind your business is what like went through my mind. But looking back now, wow, how stressed out must have I looked to a complete stranger that he felt the need to tell me to slow down. Now, if I had mindfulness, I would have noticed myself and then been able to do something about it, whether it is a certain breathing practice, whether it was adjusting my workload, setting expectations, setting boundaries, etc.
See, I think that was a message from above.
Yes.
He was delivering. You were getting a message delivered to you from someone up there. You're one of your guardians.
Yes.
That's what I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And whether we want to hear it or not at the time, that's up to us. But but again, go back to mindfulness. When we're not mindful, we don't hear those messages either. Right?
Yes. Exactly. And so that's why it's just so important for us to take care of ourselves and be mindful of how we're feeling. In my book, Black People Breathe, I share morning and evening routines. And one of them for self-care. And one of them is every morning I ask myself, good morning, Zee, how are you? I use my name in the third person because there's a little bit of like the ego doesn't get involved, and also I kind of feel cared for. And then I can acknowledge, I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling kind of tired, like whatever that might be. And then I can adjust my day or do certain practices to.
And in the book, do you have you mentioned there's different breathing for tired, right? So in the book, you have different types of breath work I love that. For medicine, like you said, for your medicine.
Yeah.
So this morning, it's funny, you bring this up, and I was thinking of this today. I don't know why I woke up in a funk. And I remember saying, reading the information on you and the cliff notes I had for the book. I remember saying, okay, like, I'll check in with myself and be mindful. And okay, so I'm like, yeah, I don't feel so good right now. And then I know what to do after that. I didn't know how to take it any further. So what happens when you check in with yourself and you're not good? What do you do? Like in the morning, hey Zee, how are you? You know what? I don't know. I'm really not. I'm in a little bit of a bad mood this morning.
Yeah.
And then what do you do with that? Do you go to your breath work?
It depends on how I'm feeling, but yes, it could be breath work. So for example, if I'm feeling anxious, right? If I'm feeling anxious, then there is a breathing practice in my book, Black People Breathe, on how to, breathe to relieve yourself from anxiety. In fact, are you interested? Do you want to do it with me right now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm
So
interested. I'm desperate.
I invite you to sit up straight so that you
Okay.
can get your full lung capacity, shoulders back and down. And we're going to breathe
That's always
in and
hard for
out
me.
through the nose, just so you know that
Okay.
beforehand. And I'm just going to
Yeah.
guide you through it. So exhale
Okay.
all your air out. And then breathing in and out through the nose. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again.
Exhaling through the end. No, I'm sorry. I don't want to
Nose,
screw up.
nose.
Exhaling through
In
the
out
nose.
through the nose.
All nose. Sorry. Okay. Let's do it again.
All nose.
Okay.
Okay. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And relax. Now, I would do this for more times, right? But just for demonstration practices, we only did
Did
it
you
twice.
kind of feel a little more relaxed? So
So
how many times would you, just as needed, or can you give me a ballpark?
studies show that this practice stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system, your fight, flight, or freeze, like all the thoughts kind of going, right? The parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest nervous system. It's your ability to relax. And so studies show that doing this for like 3 or 4 minutes can be very powerful. But even if you don't have that, I just say do it 3 or 4 times and just see how you feel. And so recognizing how you feel and then finding a breathing practice to help you can be very powerful. But let's say you're just like, I feel icky. You know what I mean? Like you can't you just said, I'm in a
That's kind of how I felt. Yeah.
yeah. And so I have a mindfulness practice that has actually been made famous by a meditation teacher named Tara Brach, but she didn't invent it either. It's been around. And so it's an acronym called RAIN. Okay. And so I'm going to walk you through it. RAIN. R is for recognize. Recognize how you're feeling. Name the emotion, right? You might have said funk or, I use the word icky, but,
Icky,
really like
either one. Yeah. Yeah.
specific and name the emotion.
Got
The
it.
the A in RAIN. So the R in RAIN is recognize. The A in RAIN is allow. Allow that feeling to be there. I grew up in a household where you sweep everything under the rug.
Suppress. Yes.
Moving, right?
Yep.
But if we do that, if we sweep it under the rug and suppress it, it builds up over time. Fast forward, you're at burnout the way I was. So A, allow it to be there. Give yourself permission to feel this way. The I in RAIN is for investigate. Be a detective and investigate. Well, what does this feeling feel like? Like it feels like I'm in a washing machine getting swung around. Like describe it in words. But also, my favorite part of this practice is investigate. Where are you feeling this in the body? Maybe it's in the belly. Maybe it's in the chest.
This one was chest. Yeah.
Yeah. And just by naming the body part and then even describing it, it's a tightness in the chest.
Yeah.
It's a clenching. It's a rawness. It's a throbbing. That allows the separation. You are the witness. You are not the feeling in your chest, which sometimes it feels like this, your whole thing. You're like, just like you have no control. But when you describe it, it allows that separation and it doesn't feel so like controlling. And then the N in RAIN is for nurture. Nurture yourself. What do you need to feel better? Are there certain words? Maybe you needed to hear, it's going to be okay. This is temporary. Maybe you need to hear, well, I'm lovable anyway, or I love myself, or people love me, right? Maybe you need to make a phone call. Maybe you need a hug. And so think about what is it that you might need to feel better based on that. And so this RAIN framework, which can be in the form of a meditation or just a process that you go through to help you feel better. And so it all starts with identify how you're feeling. Because if you don't do that, because you're so busy, this is the
on the treadmill. Yep.
Yeah, then it's going to sneak up on you in ways that are so extreme and harmful to your health.
Oh my God. All right. Very helpful. Okay. Now can we move on to imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
Can you define it? Start with defining it and tell me your experience with it, and then let's go from there and see how we
Mhm.
can deal with it.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is it's something that happens inside of us, right? It's the internal kind of feeling that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not creative enough to be in the position that we are, to do the things that we're doing despite evidence of high achievement. And I want to just repeat that. Despite evidence of high achievement, right? I was like, okay, well, I can't quit because maybe I won't be able to get a job, right? Even though my resume looks like I should be able to get a job. And yet I had this feeling inside, and I want to highlight internal because it's something happening inside. If you talk to somebody else, they'll be like, of course you can get a job, right? Of course you'll be able to do whatever it is that you want to do. And also, we talked about my journey earlier.
Mhm.
Well, gosh, imposter syndrome about becoming a mindfulness and breathwork teacher, right? I wondered, are people going to believe me that I can do this, right? Because I haven't done it before, especially for people wanting to make pivots. This imposter syndrome might creep up. Or even if you're in your current career and your job, and let's say you just got a promotion, right? And you're like, well, wait, but did they make a mistake? Or, there's so many symptoms of
So,
imposter
I
syndrome.
yeah, and this okay, you would have to tell me because 'cause I'm not a person of color, but would it not feed imposter syndrome if someone were to believe they were hired simply on their gender or their orientation or their race rather than on their credentials? Would that not and if
Yes.
you have people around you either poking you and with the microtransgressions, or the ones thinking they're supporting you, but they're still like,
Yeah.
they're still shining a light on this. Would that not feed imposter syndrome? Would that make you go, like, wait, I'm not, maybe I'm not good enough to really be here? And that would mess you
Exactly.
up pretty bad, right?
Yes, exactly. I have a friend, a younger woman. She's in her maybe like mid late 20s, and she's an engineer and she works at a startup. And she got promoted very quickly in the last year. And she came to me and she said, the men on my team have told me that the only reason I got promoted is that I'm a woman. And now you add in being a Black woman in the workplace. And so, in that situation, the men on her team told her directly that that's what they believed. But when you have people coming up to you and saying, "Are you the new diversity hire?" or kind of making comments that
I
you're
guess at least they're honest, right? Like, yeah, right.
I mean, honest, except what's the impact, right?
Well, of course, that's what I'm saying. It's like, if that's the best you can hope for, that's not very good. But
Yes.
wow.
And that leads to self-doubt, so much self-doubt. Like, there was a period in my
It
career where I was nervous to speak in meetings
oh,
because I
I
felt
hate
like I
hearing
was
that.
going to be judged.
I
Yeah.
hate hearing that. And you know what else it leads to? What you said earlier, it leads you because I seen with Maria, my wife, so,
Mm,
being a female in Hollywood, which I don't know of any business more toxic than ours.
mm.
But and it's changing now, thank God. But she would work 4 or 5 times as hard and then get herself sick. And it was never
Yes.
enough. And they just and I will say this too, Z. Uh, and I'm empathetic to the women bosses who've done it, but I've seen the older women bosses be even worse than the men. And I get it because they came up in a time where, well, they'll say now they only had so many slots, so they had to adapt and be like the men to. Um, but it was like no matter what Maria would do, they would just keep moving the finish line. It would be like it didn't matter.
Mm,
Harder and harder and harder, and then,
mm,
oh, look, I have a brain tumor. Oh, what a surprise. So
mm,
I think, yeah, I would see people either take their ball and go home, don't live their dream, their purpose, don't
mm,
get all out of this life that they deserve and should get, or they hang in and just get pummeled, overwork, and
mm.
eventually get sick.
Yes.
And I think that's what imposter syndrome, that makes sense to me what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, I never knew it to that level, but that makes a lot of sense.
And
That
and
makes a
it
lot of
leads to
sense.
chronic stress, right? Which leads
Of
to all of
course.
the illnesses. So
Either
it's
way, whether right, either if you're doubting yourself and not gonna speak in front of people, that's stress because
yeah,
you're limiting yourself. So what do you do? Like,
yeah,
what do you do to combat imposter
yeah.
syndrome, Z?
Well, in my book, Black People Breathe, I have a whole chapter on it called Countering Imposter Syndrome, right?
Okay.
Countering imposter syndrome with courage, because it does take courage to really face this head on. And so I offer a framework called WEBAV. WEBAV is an acronym. The W is for welcoming the voice. I invite folks to pause, take some quiet time, and really listen. What is this imposter syndrome voice saying to me? For me, for many years, it was, you're going to get fired. Every day I would go to work thinking, you're going to get fired. Now, there was
Every day, Z.
at one particular company, yes, every
No,
day.
I believe it because guys, I have friends like this. So I'm only asking you, Z. I already know the answer, and it's not you. I've seen this
Yeah.
every day.
Mm.
That's just hell. Sorry,
It,
that's
it,
living hell.
it
Continue,
really
please.
is.
Sorry.
And
And
there
then,
was,
can I just go off on a second? Like, could you imagine multiple degrees at Harvard, all the work that's involved to get there, just to go to a job and go every day and think you're going to get fired every day?
yeah,
And I know you're not exaggerating because I've seen this.
yeah.
All right, I digress. Continue.
Yeah, every day. And also just being, a Black woman, the other Black woman at the company was fired. Now, she was fired for being too vocal, but it's like, okay, right? And I just, especially being sometimes the only woman in the room, now obviously not at the company, but sometimes the only woman in the room, especially, on leadership teams, you just wonder. And I felt excluded, right? So I was like, you're going to get fired. So W, welcoming the voice, just like take a moment and listen. What is the voice saying? And what is the loudest thing that the voice was saying? For me, it was, you're going to get fired. That's the W. The E in WebApp is for evidence gathering. You remember the definition of imposter syndrome? It's despite evidence of high achievement. And so I invite folks to do an exercise called evidence gathering, where you write down on the top of the piece of paper the statement, like, what is this imposter syndrome voice saying? For me, it was, you're going to get fired. And then you make two lists, make a line down the middle, two lists. Evidence is facts, not opinions. Evidence that supports this statement and evidence that disproves it. And when I sat down with this, I'm going to get fired, the evidence that supported the statement, there wasn't that much evidence. There was that other Black woman got fired. There was, oh, well, if the company has any like economic problems, they might just start chopping Black. And usually the Black person's the first person to get cut. But there wasn't a long list. When I went to evidence that disproves this statement, all the things you just said, I have 2 Harvard degrees, I have a successful track record. You look at the millions of dollars that I brought this company, blah, 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 blah. And you look at it on paper, short list, long list. And if you were to try to convince someone of something and you showed them evidence, right? This is like objective. Who are you going to believe, right? So E for evidence gathering, powerful exercise. B is for breath work. We talked about some breathing exercises earlier. And in my book, Black People Breathe, I offer some breathing practices for confidence. So there are breathing practices. The A in WebApp is for affirmations. And now I used to be somebody that was like, that's self-help, like blah, blah, that's just cheesy.
You sound like me years ago. I know.
Yeah, I didn't believe it. And then I got to a low point where I really didn't believe in myself. And I did research on affirmations. And this is what I found. Affirmations can be very powerful if they are repeated, because, your neurotransmitters, we can relearn things. We can be reprogrammed, but it takes repetition. So I put affirmations in my calendar, in my reminders on my phone. They just pop up. And when my brain sees that, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Even to this day, Z? To this day? To this day, do you do that?
To this day, I still have affirmations. And I'll tell you, how do you write an affirmation? Well, they should be present tense. Sometimes they might turn a negative into a positive, right? They don't have to. But here's the key. Research shows that if you use your name and not I, it's much more powerful because again, your ego gets in the way. I, and then the I, you have all these stories associated with I and me. But if you say Z, it's much more powerful. Here's an example, me and violin, okay? I played violin since I was 5, classical music. In classical music, the music is written, and the Suzuki method, if anybody's familiar with that, the Suzuki method in violin is like You must play exactly the way this recording is, right? Okay, so fast forward to my adult life when I started playing with bands and DJs and improvising. And so I had a huge imposter syndrome about my ability to improv with violin. So here's my affirmation for violin. Zee, using my name, Zee is amazing, is present tense, amazing at violin improv, right? So having that statement, that affirmation, and then making sure it gets blasted everywhere, right? Now, that's not what's on my reminders right now today because I do different work.
Right. You don't need the affirmation for that. But I'll tell you why I think the name works over the I is because we're doing this because we're doubting ourselves.
Mm,
So when we make it I, it's ourselves, which we're already doubting. However, when we make it Kevin or Z, we're
yeah,
separating
yes.
from ourselves.
Mm,
That's why I think it for me it would work, because it's more, it feels more like a generic statement of fact rather than my opinion of me, which I'm going to doubt me.
exactly.
Because I'm already doubting me, which is why I need the affirmation. So that
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense. Present tense and use your name. I love this.
The last in WebAV, the V is for visualization.
Okay.
Visualization. Why? Well, research shows that with Olympic athletes, when they visualize their performance in an event versus when they actually do the event, it stimulates the same regions in the brain. And the same is true at work, in life, etc. And so I invite folks to visualize you being your best self in a specific situation. Maybe it's a meeting. Maybe you're going to be presenting to the board or somebody with very senior titles, right? Whatever that, but imagine a specific situation and imagine yourself being your best self and basically just like kicking ass in that situation. And you close your eyes and you visualize all the details. You visualize what you see, what you hear, you feel your voice talking, you see it all happen so that when the event actually happens, you're good. It's like, oh, you've been here before. You got this. So WebAV for imposter syndrome.
I love it. Okay, going back to, some of those situations at work
Mm,
that you were just mentioning. Um, I think a lot of times we give away our power.
mm.
Do you, can you speak to that at all? Where we give away our power, and then maybe how we can own it in a way that doesn't damage us further from these outside forces?
Mm, gosh,
Does that resonate with you at all?
well, I could go so many different directions, but I'll share what came to my mind when you said
Okay,
that.
please.
What came to my mind was boundaries and feeling like we are not in control of our situation, right? And so, and specifically as a Black woman, right, where I felt like I need to constantly prove that I deserve to be there. And so I was somebody that said yes to everything because I needed them to know that I was a team player. I needed to be indispensable so that I wouldn't get fired. My whole imposter syndrome voice, right? And so with that sense, saying yes to everything and feeling like everybody else was in control and I just had to do everything that was asked of me, I didn't set boundaries. Boundaries like, what are the hours that I'm working? Or even the channels of communication. People will just send text messages to you on weekends, and that's okay. And so by not setting boundaries, that ultimately contributes to the burnout and the chronic stress because you're not taking control of your own situation. And now why? Maybe that's, again, maybe an imposter syndrome voice of you don't have control, you do not have the power. But here's the thing. We are all amazing people. We have so much to contribute. And if we believed that we were worthy of being there, that we were smart enough, good enough, all of the things, then we would set these boundaries and we would take our power back. And here's the other thing, our opinions, our voice, using our voice. Because of low self-esteem or feeling like I was the only in the room, I wouldn't say what I really wanted to say because I almost valued other people's opinions over mine. Again, power. But we all have this amazing power inside of us and so much to contribute if only we would believe in ourselves. But to perform well, you need to not be burnt out. You need to sleep well. You need to have low stress. When you're least stressed, that's when you're most creative. That's when you treat your colleagues best. That's when you're an amazing leader, right? And so it all kind of blends together. So I agree with you. And it's all about first taking care of yourself.
I think, too, and I want to say, I remember when I tried to own my power,
Mm.
because I was always the one too that I'm a people pleaser and always trying to always believed in over delivering, and certainly didn't. Thank God I had the assets of being a white guy that I could get some passes, but I know enough about it. I will say this though. There were times that I was advised by older people, come on, you got to own your power here, stand up to the boss. He'll respect you more.
Mm.
And I remember one incident I did that and I actually lost my job. So I want to say that's if you are in that situation, maybe it's time to just get another job. Because sometimes when you do own your power, it's not always going to go your way. They're going to go, oh, that's very nice of you, Zee, to own your power. Now
Mm.
get the F out of here. And so I think that could happen too, right? Like, I mean, at least that was my experience. But
Yes.
as I've gotten older, I'm like, good. That was the best thing to get away from that for me, and to get to a place that was going to respect my power.
I totally agree with you, except I want to bring back your previous point about practicality, right? And
Yeah.
finances, right? Like if you
Yes. No, I know. I
and you
know.
pay rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, I do want to share that there are many ways to use your power. And I'll just say that
Tell
as a
me.
Black woman, I have felt that I didn't have a voice, that I wasn't seen or heard. And so I teach workshops to Black
Okay.
people and all people of color, at companies like Google and Visa and HSBC, et cetera, right? So, and in these workshops, sometimes people ask me, well, how do you get things done if you don't feel heard, right? If you don't feel seen? And you know what I tell them? Use the white man's voice. Now, that might be a controversial statement, but it is true.
Hello.
We all know that the white man's voice gets
Hello,
heard.
team.
Let me give you an example. No, not the way you speak. I mean, find a white woman.
I'm going to comedy now. That's my background. So go ahead. But Zee, go
So
ahead.
here's an example. I was working at a company and I was very upset with what they were doing in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I was very, very upset. And I'll just tell you that the CEO excluded the only DEI person from a very big initiative. Just Black woman was excluded. And so then she quit and got a different job somewhere else. And then there were no DEI people. And I knew that I wasn't going to be heard. And so I found an ally, an amazing white man in senior leadership. And I expressed my concerns because I knew he would listen to me. And I asked him, can you be a voice in the room in the executive leadership meetings? And can you ask them to hire an external third-party DEI consultant to be the objective person to analyze the situation and share some recommendations, right? So I needed him to be that voice. Now, you know what I really wanted to do? I wanted to go to the CEO directly and tell him what I thought.
Oh my God. So
in fact, I was going to do that. And then I got advice
Right.
that said, you might lose your job if you do that.
Right.
How about you try a different strategy?
Smart,
So there's reactivity, right? And then there's thoughtfulness, and mindfulness is paying attention to where you are. It is the pause between stimulus and response. Right. And my pause was getting other people's input, asking advice on what I should do, telling them what my immediate response was going to be. The pause, that is mindfulness. And then when you are mindful, you can be more objective, less emotionally charged to figure out what is the most effective way to get the outcome that I want.
It's, when I hosting the show for Maria, what I see from people like you who are super successful, the one thing that I never had is this acute awareness. If I were thinking of all the things that I would see all the successful people come on the show have in common, it's an awareness the rest of us don't have, but could have. But see, that awareness of, like, you knew between stimulus and response, pause, pump the brakes. Where am I at? Let me read the room. Yeah. Okay, you know what? If I give this guy the bum rush, it's going to go nuclear, not going to go well. How do I I have a greater goal here that's beyond Zee. It's for the
Mm.
people of this company. It's for the
Yes.
company. And then it's okay, but that's awareness. And I feel
Mm.
like I've gotten it with age and being around people like you, Zee, frankly, but most of us don't have that. We just unfortunately suppress, or we medicate, or we're on that hamster wheel.
Yeah.
So that's why this mindfulness and this awareness, I can't stress enough how important it is to fulfillment and success. But again, that's the one thing I see with everyone, all the
Mm.
successful people come on this show, is you guys have that ability to kind of see the whole football field,
Yeah. And,
but
one thing I want to underline of what you just said is that we all are capable.
capable, yes, but most of us, it's just one way or another, we're running the rat race, and we're not taking that time.
And that's where the breath comes in. That's why a very easy, practical thing you can do is just take a deep breath whenever you're triggered by something, or take a deep breath just as a pause in the middle of your day, because you are more likely to be an effective leader, an effective contributor, if you are not operating from the stress response.
Okay, so Zee, I know Black People Breathe has these techniques. Do you these breathing techniques, which I
Mhm.
love, and the different breathing techniques for different situations, which
Yes.
I've never heard before?
Mm.
Love. Breathing is medicine, per you, and I also believe that.
Mm.
But do you only use it medicinally, or do you have a daily practice that's a non-negotiable, no matter what, you're doing it every day?
So I have a daily meditation practice, and sometimes that is just pure meditating, and sometimes that does involve breathing. But yes, I think this is also like vitamins, right? And so it's like, if you do something every day, you're going to have a more solid foundation for when the tornado comes, but your foundation is solid. So I do advise folks to have a daily practice, and that can look a number of different ways. I have so many friends that say, I can't meditate. It's like my mind is like, I can't, or I don't have time. Well, here's the thing. Even something like 5 minutes every day can be so powerful in the morning, especially, of setting a solid foundation for your day. That can look like a number of things. That can look like getting one of the apps and doing a 5-minute guided meditation. It can look like doing one of the breathing practices. I'll tell you one that's amazing to do daily is box breathing. Box breathing is used from everyone from Navy SEALs to nurses. And the way it works is you inhale for a count of 4, you hold your breath for a count of 4, you exhale for a count of 4, and you hold your breath for a count of 4. That's why it's a box, 4, 4, 4, 4. And you do that repeatedly. And that can set a solid foundation so that your nervous system is in a great place to both be productive and focused, but also to not get knocked off when something happens. I mean, something's always going to happen. You might get that email that you're like, I can't believe that happened, right? I can't believe he said X. But if you have a daily practice of breathing, of mindfulness, you will be less triggered. You'll be more able to be mindful of how you're feeling, to have that pause between stimulus and response.
See, the work is Black People Breathe, but it's a book for everybody. I'm very grateful for today's interview, and I certainly have practices now that I can put in place, and I look forward to more from you, because I think this is there's more to this, and there's more help you're going to be able to give a lot of people. See, where do we find you on social media and website wise? I'm sure you have that.
Yeah. So my website is zeeclarke.com. That's ZeeClarke.com, zeeclarke.com. And on social media, I'm Zee Clarke Breathes. Again, that's ZeeClarke breathes.com. I also have a YouTube channel, which has guided breathing practices. So all the breathing practices that I've shared today, you can find guided practices. And the book is Black People Breathe, available anywhere books are sold.
Love it. Thank you so much, Zee.
Thank you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.